So you finished the race, and I'm sure you turned to shake his hand, and I'm sure, knowing a little bit about Prefontaine, he wasn't very happy with you.
He was not happy, no, because he felt that everybody sat on him, that they were keying it up on him, and he particularly chose me and abused me. And I said, what do you expect me to do? I mean, it's about winning, and it's about being first across the line. And it's, I said, our time will come where I will share the lead, but it certainly wasn't going to be tonight. Running in England, it was direct television in New Zealand. I had to win that race. Be sure of that.
So let's talk a little bit more about Pre. You guys are traveling the circuit, and you're going from Oslo to all the different track meets around. When did you run into Pre again? And I think it was like you guys ran into him the night before, or actually a few days before a race. But somebody from the U.S., they were sitting there drinking, and you and John Walker came in.
Yes, that was next year in Europe, and we actually went down to Milan to run the Milan. Well, it was just a Milan Classic, I think. And we had been encouraged by the Italian promoters to go down. The Lira wasn't, that popular outside of Italy, and so we said it'll be double what you're offering us, and we'll come. And of course, they doubled it, and so we got on the plane and travelled down. And then we went into the hotel. There was Steve Prefontaine and Ralph Mann, who was the silver medalist from Munich of the 400-metre hurdles. And Pre kind of looked and said, not the
effing Kiwis.
Yeah. So we, and the meet was still 3 days away. And so we were invited over by Ralph Mann, who was the mediator between us. And we had a few more beers and a few more. And then we decided that at 7:30 in the morning, we were going to do a 2-hour run. And we better be ready for that. So we went out, and I must admit, we ran much, much faster than we should have, and harder.
So this is Steve Prefontaine, who's coming off of fourth place in the 5,000 meters the year before. John Walker, who became the first man to go under 350 for the mile. And Rod Dixon, the Olympic bronze medalist in 1,500 meters, going out for a run.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen that.
Yeah,
that's unbelievable. So take us through that. I mean, I can't even imagine. So I imagine Pre probably pushing pace.
Well, he was certainly. I mean, I think there's this. You test yourself, and you know jolly well, in yourself that you're way ahead of. This is race pace, and you don't normally train race pace, but no one was giving in, and so Walker and I sort of sat back a little bit as Pre was pushing it, and I said, "You go with him for 2 mile, drop back. I'll go with him for 2 mile, and then I'll drop back." And I said, "That's the only way we're going to wear him out." And he figured out the third time that this wasn't going to be. This is not on. But nevertheless, I think at that stage we all sort of backed off and realized that today's wasn't going to be a race. The real race was going to be in 3 days' time.
Well, how special was Prefontaine?
A good man, a good heart, very passionate, very determined, a tough trainer, a tough racer, and a big beer drinker, I can tell you. I won't say it anymore, but it was.
And you're traveling with John Walker, like I said, the first guy to go under 350, gold medalist. You're traveling together, getting in a rental car, staying in the hotel together, and then trying to kick each other's butt on race day, right? I mean, really, to make a living, you've got to beat him, he's got to beat you, even though you're from New Zealand.
Yeah. Yes, it was. We would leave New Zealand in May, and then we would go to Europe and live and train until October, until really to the European season was over. And in that period of time, I mean, really, you're as good as your last race. You would often negotiate 2 weeks accommodation in lieu of you running a race. Sometimes you get $500, sometimes $250, and you had to try and figure it all out, how you were going to train, how you were going to do your banking, how you're going to do your travel agency, how you're going to motivate yourself. And the two of us, I mean, sometimes we had to catch trains, overnight trains, or catch buses. Sometimes we would try and hitch a ride. It was have bag will travel.
Give us some insight into John Walker and what made him so great.
John, I think, we all know and we all see in life where the real champions are born. Their genetics are just that way. And Walker was a gift. There's no doubt about that. Of all the athletes I've known in my life, Walker was the most gifted. He hated to train. He didn't like training. And often he would kind of convince me to have another hour sleeping in the morning. And I said, John, it gets up to 90 degrees. I'm getting out of bed at 6:30 and I'm running. If you want to be with me and you want to train, you'll do the same. Well, because he'd lie there to the last second. And then he would complain about getting up and that. But when he put his shoes on and we got outside, there was not an issue in that. But John had this ability to train at this level and then to perform or to race at that level. And we see it with it's Lance Armstrong or whether it's Pete Sampras or whether it's, I mean, the Michael Jordan.
Right.
Those are all above us. The rest of us are kind of in there. I could probably lift myself between 35 and 50, whereas John would go from 35 to 65, 70.
Now, there was a year where Walker went, nobody beat him, right? I mean, it was a year where he was just unbeaten except for one time.
Yes, he was just sitting on 22 wins.
22 in a row.
22 in a row.
And you knocked him off where?
We went to Zurich for the big Golden League meeting, and they actually didn't want me in the 5,000 meters, and I was happy about that. And I was put into the 1,500 meters, and the race was actually quite suited to me because the rabbits went out at around 50. Well, we went through the half in about 1:56, 1:57, and that suited me. And then
let that sink in. We went through the half in 1:56, 1:57. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
And he's like, "What's the big deal? Don't you guys all do that?" No, we don't do that.
Yeah. Well,
and then when you beat him, I mean, how did it work with you guys in terms of who's buying the beer when you win? Was it the loser buy the beer, the winner buy the beer?
Yeah, well, actually, it started off with John and I that whoever won that race had to fill the bathtub with beer.
Okay.
And so sometimes we would all win, so it was, it was shared. But I remember in a little race in Umea, and I said to John, we've got $250 to go before the next race. And I said, I'm not going to win tonight. And John said, nor am I. It was let Pre run. So Pre won, and of course he had to fill the bathtub.
Nice. That is good. That is really good. Henry Rono. How many people here have heard of Henry Rono? There we go. Henry Rono was, he actually broke 4 world records. He was a Kenyan runner, and he broke 4 world records in 81 days. He broke the record for 10,000, 5,000, 3,000, and 3,000 steeple, all in 81 days. But he had a little bit of a drinking issue, just a little bit. You ran against him a few times?
Ran against Henry a lot. And from 78 really to 79, late 79, we probably had about 5 or 6 races in Europe, especially in Europe. He had come off that 4 races, 4 world records, I should say.
Right.
And he turned up in Oslo, and we competed over the 5,000 meters. And it was unusual because Henry would tend to go out at about after 3 laps and just run you into the ground. And when he didn't come through, and Nick Rose from England, he took over, and I sat in and I knew Henry was just lurking. He was just there.
Yeah.
And then as the race went on, of course, I got more confidence because I knew that I was a little bit quicker over, say, an 800 meters than Henry. And so as we came down to 600 meters to go, then Henry took off. and I was able just to sit right into him, and coming off the turn for the home straight, I just left it, and you've got to have a sense of patience here, because you know your final effort from 7/8 effort to full effort is you're only gonna be able to do 20 meters, because when you're running 7/8 effort and you sprint and you just tie up within 20 yards, right? And so with about 20 meters to go, I just came up onto his shoulder and just kind of out-leaned him. I got him right on the line.